The security camera captured it all in stark black and white. A well-dressed man in an Italian suit forcing a screaming infant into the back of his luxury SUV, the baby's tiny fists pounding against the tinted windows as the vehicle peeled away. What nobody noticed was 17-year-old Miguel Ramirez, the quiet kid who mopped the mall floors after school to help his grandmother pay rent, slipping away from his custodial cart. His eyes narrowed with recognition as he pulled out a battered flip phone and dialed a number few civilians ever possess. How did a teenage janitor have direct access to a federal law enforcement officer? And what dark secret connected him to the man in the $3,000 suit? If stories about unlikely heroes, innocent lives hanging in the balance, and justice that arrives just in time touch your heart, please subscribe to our channel. The service corridor was cool and dim compared to the bright chaos of the mall food court. Miguel's hands trembled as he dialed the number he'd memorized 3 years ago, a number he prayed he'd never have to use. Marshal Reeves answered a crisp female voice on the second ring. Miguel pressed his back against the wall, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's Miguel Ramirez. You told me to call if I ever saw him again." A beat of silence. "Richard Kane?" "Yes, ma'am. He just took a baby from a woman in the food court. Forced her into his SUV. Same one as before. Big black Escalade. Where are you right now, Miguel?" The marshal's voice had sharpened, background noise suggesting she was already moving. "Northgate Mall, east entrance. I'm 4 minutes out. Stay where you are." Miguel closed his eyes briefly. "I can't. He's getting away." "Miguel, don't." 3 years, he cut in, voice breaking. 3 years since Elena disappeared. It's happening again. Dana Reeves's sigh carried through the phone. "What are you planning to do? Follow him?" "I know his license plate." Another pause. "You have your bike?" "Yes." "Track him, but do not, I repeat, do not engage. Text me the address when he stops. I'm on my way." Miguel was already moving toward the employee exit. "I understand." "Miguel," Dana's voice softened for just a moment. "You're doing the right thing. We'll get him this time." The call ended. Miguel burst through the door into the employee parking section, his ancient mountain bike leaned against the wall where he'd left it 5 hours earlier when his shift began. In seconds, he was pedaling hard toward the mall's main access road. 3 years ago, his sister Elena had taken a housekeeping job at Richard Kane's downtown penthouse. 3 weeks later, she vanished. Police had investigated half-heartedly, just another missing immigrant teen, until U.S. Marshal Dana Reeves took interest in the case. She'd suspected Kane was part of something larger, but without evidence, she couldn't move against the powerful businessman. The day the investigation was closed, she'd given Miguel her personal number. "Keep your eyes open," she'd told him. "Men like Kane don't stop. If you ever see him again, call me immediately." For 3 years, Miguel had worked at the mall, watching, waiting. His mother had fallen into depression after Elena's disappearance, eventually dying from what the doctors called natural causes. But what Miguel knew was a broken heart. His grandmother had taken him in, and he'd continued working to help with rent while finishing high school. He'd almost given up hope of ever seeing Kane again, until today. Miguel's legs burned as he pumped the pedals, weaving through mall traffic. He caught sight of the black Escalade turning onto the highway on-ramp. Thankfully, rush hour traffic meant the SUV couldn't move at full speed. Miguel followed at a distance, using delivery trucks as cover. The baby's cries echoed in his memory, mingling with his last memories of Elena, her voice excited about the new job, the extra money it would bring their family. "Mr. Kane is so generous," she'd said. "He's even talking about sponsoring my college applications next year." 2 exits later, the Escalade turned into the circular drive of Westlake Apartments, the most expensive high-rise in the city. Miguel stopped across the street, watching as Richard Kane emerged from the driver's side, a squirming bundle clutched against his expensive suit. The doorman hurried to help, but Kane waved him off, disappearing into the building. Miguel pulled out his phone and texted Dana, "Westlake Apartments, penthouse. He has the baby." The response came seconds later. 8 minutes out. Stay put. Miguel slipped his phone back into his pocket. He knew the building. He'd worked janitorial there for 2 months before being fired for asking too many questions about the penthouse. He knew about the service entrance, the staff elevators, the security gaps. For the first time in 3 years, he was close to answers about Elena, and maybe, just maybe, close to saving another family from the same nightmare. Miguel locked his bike to a street sign and walked toward the building's service entrance. He would stay put right outside the penthouse door, where Dana Reeves would find him when she arrived. U.S. Marshal Dana Reeves pulled into the mall parking lot, emergency lights flashing but sirens silent. Her government-issued Dodge Charger slid into a space near the east entrance. She wore a tailored dark suit with her badge displayed on her belt, her brown hair pulled back in a tight ponytail that accentuated her sharp features. Male security met her at the door. A heavy-set man in his 50s with Chief emblazoned on his uniform, Marshal Reeves. She introduced herself, flashing her credentials. "I need to see your security footage immediately." "Already pulled it up, ma'am," the chief replied, leading her through the mall. "Got a report of a disturbance, but honestly, looked more like a custody dispute to me." Guy was well-dressed, knew the woman by name. Dana's expression remained neutral. "Let me be the judge of that." In the small security office, 3 monitors displayed different angles of the food court. The chief queued up the footage from 20 minutes earlier. The scene unfolded exactly as Miguel had described. A well-dressed man approached a young Latina, woman sitting with an infant. Words were exchanged, the woman growing visibly distressed. Then suddenly the man grabbed the baby and strode quickly toward the exit, the woman chasing after him until he shoved her hard enough that she fell. The cameras tracked his path to a black Escalade. "That's not a custody dispute," Dana said coldly. "That's an abduction. Did any of your people try to stop him?" The security chief shifted uncomfortably. "My guys reported a domestic situation. The gentleman is Richard Kane. He owns half the commercial real estate in this city. We assumed—" "You assumed wrong." Dana pointed to the screen where a teenage boy in a janitor's uniform could be seen watching the incident. "Is this employee still here?" "The cleaning kid?" "No, he disappeared right after. Probably scared off by the commotion." Dana nodded, unsurprised. "I need the contact information for the woman in the video." Already gave her statement to police. "Name's Lucia Mendez, works at the bakery kiosk." "And the baby?" "Her daughter? Sophia, I think she said. 8 months old." The door to the security office opened and a breathless Miguel entered, his uniform slightly disheveled. "You were supposed to wait for me," Dana said, though there was no real anger in her voice. "I followed him. He's at Westlake Apartments. Penthouse. I saw him go in with the baby." Miguel's eyes darted to the security footage, then back to Dana. "She's still alive." Dana gestured for Miguel to follow her outside the office, away from the security chief's curious ears. "You're certain it's him? The same man from 3 years ago?" "Positive. Same car, same walk, same everything." Miguel's hands clenched at his sides. "He took that baby just like he took Elena." Dana's expression softened slightly. "We don't know that for sure." "I do." Miguel's voice was firm. "And now we have proof. It's on camera this time." Dana studied the teenager. Miguel had grown since she last saw him. Taller, leaner, his eyes carrying a weight no 17-year-old should bear. She'd worked in the Child Abduction Recovery Unit for 15 years, long enough to recognize the determination in his face. "Local PD is handling the initial report," she said, "but this crosses jurisdictions from his previous cases. That puts it in federal territory. My territory. So you're going after him?" "We are." Dana checked her weapon discreetly. "I need someone who knows the building." Miguel's eyes widened. "I worked there for 2 months. I know the service entrances, the staff elevators, everything." "That's why you're coming with me." Dana started walking toward the exit. "But you stay behind me at all times. This isn't vigilante hour. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "And Miguel?" She stopped, fixing him with a serious look. "If we find evidence about Elena, we handle it by the book. No compromising the investigation." He nodded solemnly. "I just want the truth." They reached Dana's vehicle, and she opened the passenger door for him. "Then let's go get it." As they drove toward Westlake Apartments, Dana made 2 calls, one to her supervisor requesting backup, another to the local police informing them of federal jurisdiction. "Richard Kane," she explained to Miguel as she drove, "on our radar for years. Suspected connections to child trafficking, but nothing solid enough for an arrest. Multiple women have come forward with claims he manipulated them, then took their children. All the cases mysteriously fell apart." "Because he's rich," Miguel said bitterly. "Partly," Dana admitted, "but also because he's careful. Never leaves. Evidence. Until today," Miguel replied. Dana's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Until today. Richard Kane paced across the imported marble floors of his penthouse, phone pressed to his ear, while baby Sophia wailed from a hastily assembled playpen in the corner. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a space. Designed to impress, modern art on the walls, minimalist furniture that cost more than most cars, a view encompassing the entire city skyline. "I don't care what it takes, Jeffrey. Get the plane ready." He snapped into the phone. 2 passengers. "Tonight." "The usual documentation?" He glanced at the crying infant with annoyance. 8 months old, dark curls, caramel skin. She would fetch a premium from the right buyers, especially with her medical records showing perfect health. "No, I can't wait until tomorrow," he continued, moving to his office and closing the door to muffle the crying. "There was a complication. We need to accelerate the timeline." Richard ended the call and opened a hidden panel behind his desk, revealing a wall safe. Inside lay multiple passports, driver's licenses, and birth certificates, some blank, others already filled with various names. He selected a passport and a blank birth certificate, placing them in his briefcase. His phone rang again. The building's security desk. "Mr. Kane, sorry to disturb you, but there's someone in the lobby asking questions about you." Richard stiffened. "What kind of questions?" "About whether you came in with a child. She claimed to be from Child Services, but something seems off. Did you get a name?" "No, sir." "She left when I started asking for ID. Dark-haired woman, professional looking. Increased security. No one comes up without my explicit approval." "Yes, sir." Richard hung up and immediately made another call. "We have a problem. Lucia must have reported the incident." He listened briefly. "No, I don't think police would be here this quickly. Could be the Marshal again." He walked to the window, looking down at the street below, searching for unmarked vehicles or anything suspicious. Nothing obvious, but Richard hadn't built his empire by taking unnecessary risks. 20 years ago, he'd clawed his way out of the foster system, determined never to be powerless again. Real estate development had been his ladder, buying distressed properties, leveraging political connections to rezone them, then selling at massive profits. Now he controlled billions in assets across 3 continents, but his true passion lay elsewhere. Richard returned to the main room where Sophia had exhausted herself into whimpering. He looked down at her with something almost like tenderness. "You'll have a better life," he murmured. "Better than your mother could ever give you." He'd started 5 years ago, identifying vulnerable single mothers, offering help, gaining trust, then disappearing with their children. His international network handled the rest: new identities, transport to private facilities overseas, eventual placement with wealthy families willing to pay enormous sums for healthy infants with no questions. Asked Elena Ramirez had complicated things. Unlike the others, she'd discovered documents, begun asking questions. He'd had to accelerate that operation, too. Richard opened a cabinet and removed a bottle and formula. While preparing it, he mentally cataloged what needed to happen in the next few hours. Finish the documentation for Sophia, pack essential items, meet his private plane. By tomorrow morning, they'd be at his compound in Costa Rica, where he controlled the local officials and no U.S. law could touch him. From there, she would join the others. His phone buzzed again. "Sir, the maintenance supervisor is reporting. An issue with the service elevator. Says it's stuck between floors." Richard frowned. The timing was too convenient. "Send security to check it." "Already did, sir." No one's responding on the elevator phone. A cold sensation settled in Richard's stomach. He moved quickly to his office, unlocking the bottom drawer of his desk. The handgun felt reassuringly heavy as he checked that it was loaded. Returning to the main room, he lifted Sophia from the playpen. She squirmed but accepted the bottle, her cries finally ceasing. Richard carried her to the bedroom, placing her in the center of his king-sized bed, surrounding her with pillows so she couldn't roll off. Then he positioned himself in the living room, angled to see both the main door and the service entrance, gun concealed behind a decorative cushion. Richard Kane hadn't come this far to be stopped now. If that Marshal had returned, she would find him better prepared than last time. And if it was just building maintenance, no one would be the wiser. He settled in to wait, perfectly still, listening for any sound from the hallway. The wealthy man's fingers brushed against the cool metal of the gun, a reminder of how far he was willing to go to protect what he'd built. Dana and Miguel stood across the street from Westlake Apartments, observing the gleaming glass tower from the shelter of a coffee shop awning. The building exuded exclusivity, a uniformed doorman guarding the entrance, luxury vehicles coming and going, security cameras covering every angle of approach. "Backup is 20 minutes out," Dana said, checking her phone. "I've requested a warrant, but that'll take time too." Miguel shifted anxiously. "The baby doesn't have time." "I know." Dana's expression remained professional, but Miguel could see the tension in her jaw. "Tell me about the building's security." "Main entrance has a doorman 24/7. Visitors get logged. Elevator needs key card access for the upper floors." Miguel pointed toward the side of the building. "Service entrance is there. Delivery trucks, maintenance staff. Also key card, but the lock's been broken for months. Management keeps saying they'll fix it. Cameras? Everywhere in the main areas, fewer in service corridors. There's a blind spot near the trash compactor. That's where staff used to take smoke breaks." Dana nodded, taking in the information. "You seem to know a lot for someone who only worked here 2 months, Miguel shrugged. "I pay attention, especially after Elena." "What exactly did you do here?" "Cleaning, maintenance, whatever they needed." His eyes remained fixed on the building. "I applied because I knew it was his building. Thought maybe I could find something about Elena." Dana gave him a sidelong glance. "That was dangerous." "Not as dangerous as doing nothing." Miguel's voice was quiet but firm. "My mother died waiting for answers." Dana didn't respond immediately, her gaze returning to the building. Finally, she said, "Some predators think they're above the law, that money and connections make them untouchable." Her hand rested briefly on her sidearm. "They're wrong." They crossed the street, approaching the main entrance. The doorman, a broad-shouldered man in his 30s, straightened as they approached. "Can I help you?" His eyes flickered to Dana's badge, visible on her belt. U.S. Marshal Dana Reeves. "I need to speak with Richard Kane." The doorman's expression remained neutral. "Do you have an appointment?" "This is official business." "I'm sorry, Marshal, but Mr. Kane left strict instructions not to be disturbed. I can call up if you'd like." "That won't be necessary." Dana's voice cooled. "We have reason to believe Mr. Kane is holding a child against her will." The doorman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mr. Kane is a respected resident. I can't allow access without proper authorization." Dana stepped closer. "Interfering with a federal investigation is a serious offense. So is entering private property without a warrant." The doorman stood his ground. "I'm following protocols." Dana assessed the situation quickly. Making a scene would only alert Kane. She nodded curtly and walked away, Miguel following. "Now what?" Miguel asked once they were out of earshot. "Now we use your knowledge." Dana turned toward the side of the building. "Show me that service entrance." They circled around to a less ornate door marked "Deliveries Only." Miguel led them into a narrow alley where delivery trucks would park. "The key card reader works, but the magnetic lock is busted," Miguel explained, demonstrating by pulling the door open slightly. "Management keeps it locked with a regular deadbolt during non-delivery hours." Dana examined the lock. "Can you get us past this?" Miguel reached into his pocket and produced a small metal tool. "Maintenance master key. They forgot to take it when they fired me." Dana raised an eyebrow but said nothing as Miguel unlocked the door. They slipped inside. entering a stark utilitarian hallway, a sharp contrast to the luxury of the main entrance. "Service elevator is this way," Miguel whispered, leading them past storage rooms and a laundry facility. "It goes all the way to the penthouse level. Staff use it to deliver packages and clean when residents are out." They reached the service elevator, and Miguel pressed the call button. Nothing happened. "That's weird," he murmured, pressing it again. Dana glanced around. "Stairs? Through that door, but it's 28 floors." Dana checked her weapon discreetly. "Better start climbing." Before they could move, Miguel spotted a maintenance worker coming down the corridor. He grabbed Dana's arm and pulled her around the corner. "What?" she began. "It's Hector," Miguel whispered. "He knows me." They waited as the worker passed. Then Miguel stepped out. "Hey, Hector. Long time no see, man." The older man turned, surprised. "Miguel, what are you doing here?" "Helping out a friend." Miguel gestured vaguely. "Service elevator's not working?" Hector shook his head. "Stuck between floors. Management's called the elevator company." "We really need to get upstairs," Miguel said. "My friend left something important in the penthouse." Hector looked suspicious. "The penthouse? Mr. Kane's place?" Dana stepped forward, showing her badge. "U.S. Marshal. This is official business." Hector's eyes widened. "The freight elevator in the back still works? But you didn't hear it from me." Once Hector had gone, Dana turned to Miguel. "Lead the way." The fluorescent lights of the police station cast harsh shadows across Lucia Mendez's face as she sat in the hard plastic chair, her hand still trembling around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. At 24, she looked both younger and older. At once, her round face marked by exhaustion, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Ms. Mendez, I need you to go through it one more time," Detective Powell said, his tone suggesting this was routine rather than an emergency. Middle-aged with a receding hairline, he'd been taking notes with the mechanical disinterest of someone who'd heard too many domestic disputes. "I already told you," Lucia said, her accented English precise but strained. "Richard took Sophia. He just grabbed her and ran." "Richard Kane? The developer?" Powell's skepticism was palpable. "And you're saying you two had no prior relationship?" Lucia closed her eyes briefly. "We did. We were dating. For 6 months. So he's the father?" "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "Sophia's father died before she was born. Car accident." Powell made another note. "So how did you meet Mr. Kane?" Lucia set the coffee cup down, trying to steady herself. "At the food court. I worked at Dulce Bakery. He would come in every Tuesday, order the same thing. Black coffee, cinnamon roll." She swallowed hard. "He left big tips. Started talking to me. Said my pastries were the best he'd ever tasted. And you started dating." "Not right away. He was persistent. Said I had talent, that he wanted to help me start my own catering business." Her voice caught. "I thought he was kind, generous." "When did things change?" Powell asked slightly. "More interested now. 2 weeks ago. I was at his apartment. Sophia was napping in the bedroom. I went to get Richard's phone to take a picture of us, and I saw his emails." Her hands twisted together. "He was researching international adoption laws, private adoptions, countries with weak regulations." Powell frowned. "Did you confront him?" "Not then. I was scared. I made an excuse and left early." Lucia stared at her hands. "Then I found documents in his briefcase, lists of women's, names with notes about their children, physical characteristics, medical histories. One had a price next to it. You think he was planning to sell your daughter?" "I know he was." Lucia's voice hardened. "When I told him I couldn't see him anymore, he got angry. Said I owed him for all he'd done, that Sophia deserved better than what I could give her." She looked up, meeting Powell's eyes directly. "Today was the first time I've seen him since. He came to my work, acted normal at first, then just took her." Powell sighed, checking his watch. "Ms. Mendez, these are serious allegations against a prominent citizen. Do you have any proof? The emails? Documents?" "No, but the mall has security cameras. They must have recorded everything. We're reviewing the footage." Powell's tone suggested he was humoring her. In the meantime, my baby is with him." Lucia stood abruptly. Every minute we sit here, Ms. Mendez, please calm down. We've sent officers to Mr. Kane's residence. If your daughter's there, they'll find her. Will they? Will they really? Lucia's voice trembled. Or will they see his fancy apartment and decide I'm just some hysterical immigrant making things up? Powell's face tightened. That's not fair. None of this is fair. My daughter is... The door opened, interrupting her. A young officer poked his head in. Detective, call for you. Line 3. Powell excused himself, leaving Lucia alone in the interview room. She sank back into the chair, exhaustion washing over her. 6 months ago, Richard had seemed like a miracle. Handsome, wealthy, interested in her and her dreams. He'd talked about financing her own bakery, had even shown her potential locations. She'd been so naive. A single mother working 2 jobs, suddenly noticed by someone like him. It had felt like a fairy tale. Instead, it had become a nightmare. The door opened again and Powell returned. Something had changed in his demeanor. The skepticism replaced by a new urgency. We just received a call from the U.S. Marshal Service. They've located your daughter. Lucia's heart leapt. Sophia? She's okay? Where is she? A marshal named Reeves is at Westlake Apartments now. They've confirmed Mr. Kane has the child. Powell was already reaching for his jacket. We're heading there now. I'm coming with you, Lucia said, already on her feet. Ms. Mendez, this could be dangerous. She's my daughter. The words were simple but delivered with unmistakable resolve. Powell hesitated, then nodded. Stay behind the officers at all times. As they hurried through the station, Lucia sent up silent prayers to God, to her late husband, to whatever forces might be listening, that they wouldn't be too late, that her beautiful Sophia would be unharmed, that this nightmare would end. In the police car, speeding toward Westlake Apartments with lights flashing, Lucia clutched the St. Christopher medal she wore around her neck, her husband's last gift, before the accident. For the first time since Richard had grabbed Sophia, she allowed herself to hope. The freight elevator opened to a narrow corridor illuminated by recessed lighting. Dana exited first, hand near her weapon, while Miguel followed close behind. Unlike the opulent main hallways, this passage was purely functional. Concrete floors, plain walls, service doors labeled with apartment numbers. Penthouses at the end, Miguel whispered. 2 entrances, main door and service door. Dana nodded, moving silently down the hallway. Years of experience had taught her to balance urgency with caution. If Kane was as dangerous as she suspected, rushing in would put both the baby and themselves at risk. Those cameras working? She asked, indicating small security devices mounted. Near the ceiling, Miguel studied them. Red lights on, so probably. But they only feed to building security, not individual apartments. Good. Dana reached into her pocket and removed what looked like a small remote. She pointed it at each camera they passed, pressing a button. Temporary scrambler. Buys us about 20 minutes before security realizes something's wrong. They reached the end of the hallway where it opened into a more luxurious corridor. Marble floors, elegant wallpaper, artwork mounted between doors. Around the corner would be the main entrance to the penthouse. Miguel pointed to an unmarked door. Service entrance. Staff use it for cleaning when residents are out. Dana listened intently. From inside, she could hear the faint sounds of a baby crying. That's our probable cause, she murmured, unholstering her weapon. Stay behind me. Miguel nodded, pressing himself against the wall as Dana moved to the door. She tested the handle. Locked. Can you get us in? She asked. Miguel examined the lock. Different from the service entrance. I don't have a key for this. Dana considered their options. The warrant was still pending, but the child's cries established exigent circumstances. She could legally enter a risk if she believed someone was in immediate danger. We'll try the front door first. Announce ourselves properly. She gestured for Miguel to stay put. Wait here until I call for you. Dana moved around the corner to the main entrance of the penthouse. An imposing double door with elegant fixtures. She positioned herself to the side, gun lowered but ready, and knocked firmly. U.S. Marshal, open the door. Inside, the baby's cries grew louder. Dana heard movement. Footsteps approaching the door. "Who is it?" Richard Kane's voice called out. "U.S. Marshal, Dana Reeves." "I need you to open the door, Mr. Kane." A pause. "Do you have a warrant, Marshal? I have reason to believe a child is being held against her will. That gives me probable cause to enter." Dana kept her voice authoritative. "Open the door now, or I'll be forced to break it down." The security chain rattled, and the door opened a few inches. Richard Kane appeared in the gap, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his expression one of practiced confusion. "Marshal Reeves." What a surprise. His tone was perfectly calibrated, polite but wary. "What's this about a child?" "Sophia Mendez, 8 months old. Witnesses saw you take her from her mother at Northgate Mall approximately 1 hour ago." Richard's expression didn't falter. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Lucia asked me to watch Sophia while she handled some personal matters. Then, you won't mind if I come in and verify the child's welfare?" "Actually, I would mind." His smile remained in place, but his eyes hardened. "Without a warrant, you're asking for permission to enter my home. I'm declining." Behind him, Sophia's cries grew more distressed. Dana could just make out a playpen in the living room beyond. "Mr. Kane, I can hear the child in distress. I'm entering with or without your permission." "That would be illegal, Marshal. I know my rights." Richard began to close the door. "If you want to speak further, contact my attorney." Dana wedged her foot in the door. "Mr. Kane, I'm entering under exigent circumstances to check on the welfare of a minor." Richard's facade cracked slightly. "Remove your foot from my door, or I'll file a complaint for harassment." Dana could see his right hand, hidden behind the door, possibly holding a weapon. She needed to proceed carefully. "The child's mother has reported her kidnapped. Local police are en route. This can go one of 2 ways. You cooperate now or face additional charges for obstruction." Richard's eyes darted past her shoulder, scanning the hallway. Dana realized he was looking for Miguel. He must have recognized the name when the security desk called. In that moment of distraction, Dana heard a sound from inside the apartment. A thud followed by glass breaking. Richard's head turned instinctively toward the noise. Dana seized the opportunity, pushing against the door with her shoulder. The security chain snapped, and the door flew open. Richard stumbled backward, revealing a gun in his right hand. Dana immediately raised her weapon. "Drop the gun, now!" Richard froze, weapon half raised, his perfect composure finally shattered. In the living room beyond, Sophia wailed from her playpen, tiny fists pounding against the mesh sides. And near the service entrance, Miguel stood amid broken glass from a vase he'd apparently knocked over through the partially open door, creating the distraction Dana needed. "I said drop the gun," Dana repeated, her aim unwavering. "Don't make this worse than it already is." Richard Kane had learned early that the world belonged to those who took what they wanted. His first memory was of the foster home, where he'd spent ages 4 through 7. Cold linoleum floors, the smell of bleach masking something worse, the sound of too many children competing for too little attention. "You're nothing special," Mrs. Dempsey had told him once when he'd proudly shown her a perfect math test. "Don't get ideas above your station." At 12, he'd discovered his first hustles, running errands for local businesses, then skimming from the cash they gave him. By 16, he was selling test answers to rich kids at the public high school he'd talked his way into. He graduated with honors, charmed his way into a second-tier college with a scholarship, and leveraged an internship at a real estate firm into his first legitimate business opportunity. The early acquisitions were small, rundown properties in neighborhoods on the verge of gentrification. He renovated cheaply using contractors who employed undocumented workers, then sold at markup. 3 properties became 10, 10 became 50. By 30, Richard Kane was a name people recognized in business circles. By 35, he had enough. Political connections to ensure zoning laws always worked in his favor. Now, at 43, his net worth exceeded 9 figures, spread across real estate holdings, investment funds, and offshore accounts. But money had never been the true goal. Standing in his penthouse with Dana Reeves' gun trained on him, Richard calculated his options. The gun in his hand, A custom Sig Sauer represented his most immediate problem. Drawing it had been a mistake, one he wouldn't have made if he'd been thinking clearly. "Last chance," Dana said, her aim steady. "Drop the weapon." Richard could hear sirens approaching outside. His window of opportunity was closing fast. Of course, Marshal. He lowered the gun slowly, placing it on the marble coffee table, his mind racing. "This is all a misunderstanding." "Step away from the weapon," Dana ordered. "Hands where I can see them." Richard complied, moving toward the center of the room. The crying infant in the playpen was becoming a liability, the noise making it difficult. "To think, Miguel," Dana called, not taking her eyes off Richard. "Check on the baby." The teenager moved cautiously into the apartment, giving Richard a wide berth as he approached the playpen. His expression hardened when he saw Sophia's tear-streaked face. "She's okay," Miguel reported, gently lifting the infant. "Hey, it's all right." "You're safe now," Richard watched as the baby immediately quieted in Miguel's arms, her cries subsiding to hiccuping sobs. The intimacy of the moment, the natural way the boy comforted the child, triggered something ugly inside him. "I suppose I should contact my attorney," Richard said, his voice regaining its customary smoothness. "I suppose you should," Dana agreed, keeping her weapon trained on him as she spoke into her radio. "This is Marshal Reeves. I've secured the suspect and recovered the child. Send units to the penthouse." Richard's gaze drifted to the hallway leading to his office, to the safe where evidence of his other operations remained hidden. He needed to buy time. "You're making a serious mistake, Marshal," he said. "I have friends in the Justice Department who won't take kindly to this harassment." Dana's expression didn't change. "Save it for your lawyer." Behind her, Miguel was looking around the apartment, his eyes lingering on the photographs displayed. On a side table, Richard watched the boy's face change as he recognized something. "That's Elena's necklace," Miguel said suddenly, shifting Sophia to one arm so he could point to a picture. "Why do you have a photo with Elena's necklace?" Richard kept his expression neutral, though internally he cursed his oversight. The photo showed him at a charity gala with his arm around a young woman, not Elena, but wearing the distinctive pendant he'd taken as a souvenir. "I don't know what you're talking about," Richard said smoothly. "That's my associate's daughter." Miguel moved closer to the photo, his face flushed with anger. "That's my mother's necklace, the one she gave Elena for her quinceañera. Hand-carved, obsidian heart with silver edges." Dana glanced at the photo, then back to Richard. "Care to explain that, Mr. Kane?" Richard's mind calculated rapidly. The photo wasn't incriminating on its own. "Many young women have similar jewelry. It's hardly unique." "Where is she?" Miguel demanded, his voice rising. "Where's my sister?" "I have no idea what." A pounding at the door interrupted him. "Police, open up!" Dana called out. "U.S. Marshal inside. Situation under control." The door pushed open, and uniformed officers entered, weapons drawn. Behind them came Detective Powell and a young woman whose eyes locked immediately on the baby in Miguel's arms. "Sophia!" Lucia Mendez cried, rushing forward. Miguel carefully handed the infant to her mother. Sophia's tiny hands immediately clutched at Lucia's shirt, her cries turning to contented gurgling. Richard watched the reunion with detached interest, his mind already constructing narratives, alibis, explanations. One setback didn't mean the end. He still had resources, offshore accounts, properties in countries without extradition treaties, contacts who could make problems disappear. All he needed was an opportunity. As the officers secured him with handcuffs, Richard noticed Miguel staring at him with unwavering intensity, the boy's eyes burning with a question Richard had no intention of answering. "Where is Elena?" The penthouse had transformed from a pristine luxury residence to an active crime scene in a matter of minutes. Uniformed officers secured the premises, while Detective Powell conferred with Dana near the entrance. Lucia sat on the sofa, cradling Sophia and refusing to let her go, even when paramedics arrived to check the baby's condition. Richard stood with his back against the wall, hands cuffed in front of him, his earlier composure now a carefully maintained mask. His eyes tracked every movement, every conversation, looking for weaknesses, opportunities. Miguel hadn't moved from the photographs. He picked up the frame containing the image of the woman wearing Elena's necklace, studying it with intense focus. "I need to search the rest of the apartment," Dana told Powell. "Based on Miguel's identification of his sister's property, we have reason to believe there may be evidence related to Elena Ramirez's disappearance." Powell nodded. "I'll secure a warrant for the entire premises. In the meantime, we've got Kane on kidnapping charges from today's incident." "I'd like to speak with my attorney," Richard interrupted, his voice carrying across the room. "And I'd appreciate if the young man would stop handling my personal belongings." Miguel looked up, his expression a mixture of grief and rage. He set the photo down carefully and approached Richard, stopping a few feet away. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice surprisingly steady. Richard regarded him with clinical detachment. "I have no idea what you're talking about. As I've explained to the authorities multiple times, I never met your sister." "Then why do you have her necklace?" "As I said, it's a common design. Many young women have similar jewelry." Miguel took another step closer. 3 years I've been looking for her." Dana moved to intercept, placing a gentle hand on Miguel's shoulder. "Let's handle this by the book." "The book?" Miguel's voice cracked. "The book didn't help Elena. The book let him walk away last time." "Not this time," Dana promised, maintaining her grip on his shoulder. Richard's lips curved in a slight smile. "You should listen to the Marshal, young man. Making unfounded accusations could result in a slander suit." Miguel stared at Richard, then suddenly turned away, moving toward the hallway that led deeper into the penthouse. "Miguel," Dana called sharply, "don't compromise the scene." "I just want to see," he replied, pausing at the entrance to the corridor. "I worked in buildings like this. All the penthouses have the same layout." Richard straightened, a flicker of alarm crossing his features. "That area is private. You have no right—" "Actually," Dana interrupted, "exigent circumstances allow us to conduct a protective sweep of the premises." She nodded to 2 uniformed officers. "Secure all rooms. Make sure no one else is present." As the officers moved past Miguel into the hallway, Richard's composure slipped further. "This is harassment. My attorney will have badges for this." Dana approached him directly. "Mr. Kane, right now you're being charged with kidnapping Sofia Mendez. If we find evidence connecting you to Elena Ramirez's disappearance, those charges will expand significantly." "You won't find anything because there's nothing to find," Richard replied coldly. "The Ramirez girl worked for me briefly. She quit, without notice. Whatever happened after that has nothing to do with me." From down the hallway came a shout. "Marshal, you need to see this!" Dana gave Richard a hard look before heading toward the voice, gesturing for Miguel to stay with the officers. "Near Lucia," but Miguel didn't listen. He followed close behind Dana as she entered what appeared to be Richard's home office, an expansive room with floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive desk, and walls lined with awards and photographs of Richard with various dignitaries. One of the officers stood by an open panel in the wall, revealing a hidden safe. "Found this behind a painting." Door was ajar. Dana approached cautiously, examining the contents without touching anything. Inside were stacks of cash, multiple passports, and a laptop. "Looks like he was getting ready to run," the officer commented. Miguel peered around Dana, his breath catching as he spotted something else in the safe, a small velvet pouch, partially visible beneath the passports. "That's—" he began, but Dana silenced him with a gesture. "We'll process everything properly," she said. "Go back to the living room." Reluctantly, Miguel obeyed, returning to find Richard being read his Miranda rights by Detective Powell. Lucia had been moved to a separate area of the living room where a female officer sat with her. As she continued to hold Sofia, Richard's eyes met Miguel's as he returned, and something in their cold calculation made Miguel's skin crawl. This was a man who viewed people as objects, as possessions to be acquired or discarded. "You'll never find her," Richard said quietly, so only Miguel could hear as he passed. "Some things stay buried." Before Miguel could respond, Dana returned from the office, her expression grim but professional. "Detective, we're going to need federal forensics. There's evidence of multiple false identities, financial documents that suggest money laundering, and possibly information related to other missing persons. Powell nodded. I'll make the call. Richard's face remained impassive, but Miguel could see the slight tightening around his eyes, the first genuine indication of concern. You made a mistake, Miguel told him, matching Richard's quiet tone. You kept trophies. For just a moment, something dangerous flashed in Richard's eyes, a glimpse of the predator beneath the polished exterior. Then it was gone, replaced by empty arrogance as officers led him toward the door. Dana placed a hand on Miguel's shoulder. We'll find her, she promised. One way or another, we'll get the truth. 3 years earlier, Elena Ramirez had bounded into their small apartment, waving a business card like it was a winning lottery ticket. At 19, she radiated the kind of optimism that came from believing life would inevitably improve if you worked hard enough. Look, Miguelito, she'd exclaimed, using the childhood nickname that normally annoyed him. I got the job. Miguel, then 14, had looked up from his homework at the kitchen table. What job? Housekeeping at Westlake Apartments. For Richard Kane himself. She'd spun in a circle, her long braid whipping around. The pay is amazing, almost double what I make at the hotel, and he said if I do well, he might help with college applications next year. Their mother, Isabella, had entered from the bedroom where she'd been folding laundry. Unlike Elena, she wore caution like a well-used coat. This sounds too good, mija. Why would a rich man offer so much for housekeeping? Elena had rolled her eyes. Because he can afford it, Mama, and because Mrs. Sanchez recommended me. Her daughter works in the building management office. Just be careful, Isabella had warned. Men like that sometimes want more than cleaning. It's not like that, Elena had insisted. He barely noticed me during the interview. He's super professional. For 3 weeks, everything had seemed perfect. Elena worked at Kane's penthouse 3 days a week, coming home with stories of incredible artwork and furniture so expensive, you're afraid to breathe near it. The money was good, the hours reasonable, and Elena had even started researching college programs for the following year. Then came the day Miguel returned from school to find his mother sitting at the kitchen table, Elena's cell phone in front of her, tears streaming down her face. She's not answering, Isabella had said, her voice hollow. She was supposed to be home 4 hours ago. They'd called everyone, Elena's friends, her former co-workers at the hotel. Mrs. Sanchez, whose daughter, had recommended her for the job. No one had seen her. When they called the management office at Westlake Apartments, they were told Elena had never arrived for work that day. But that's impossible, Isabella had argued. She left wearing her uniform. She texted me when she got on the bus. The police had taken a report but showed little urgency. Another missing immigrant, they seemed to imply without saying it directly. Probably ran off with a boyfriend. She'll turn up. Days turned into weeks. Miguel and Isabella plastered the neighborhood with homemade flyers bearing Elena's smiling face. They visited shelters, hospitals, even morgues. Nothing. It was Miguel who'd thought to check the bus route Elena would have taken, questioning drivers, showing her picture to regular passengers. It was Miguel who'd discovered that Elena had gotten off at her regular stop near Westlake Apartments the day she disappeared, according to a barista at a nearby coffee shop who remembered her uniform. And it was Miguel who had finally convinced a reluctant detective to request security footage from the building, footage that showed Elena entering the service entrance at her usual time, but never leaving. When confronted, Richard Kane had an explanation ready. Elena had indeed come to work, but they'd had a disagreement about some missing items. He'd fired her, and she'd left upset. The security footage showing her exit must have been corrupted. A technical glitch the building's security firm confirmed was possible. No warrant was issued to search Kane's apartment. No further investigation was pursued. Without evidence of a crime, the case went cold. Isabella had never recovered from the loss. Her health declined steadily, first insomnia, then depression, finally a weakened immune system that couldn't fight off a common pneumonia. She died 18 months after Elena's disappearance, still whispering her daughter's name. Miguel went to live with his grandmother, Abuela Rosa, in her tiny apartment near the mall. At her insistence, he stayed in school, but took the janitorial job to help with expenses. Every day he carried Elena's photograph, showing it to new employees, to shoppers who might have seen something. And he watched, waited, learned everything he could about Richard Kane, his habits, his businesses, his patterns. 6 months ago, Miguel had spotted him at the mall, the first sighting since Elena's disappearance. Kane had been shopping with a young woman, her pregnancy visible beneath a flowing dress. Miguel had followed them discreetly, watching their interaction. The woman had seemed happy, laughing at Kane's comments, accepting his arm as they walked. Just like Elena had described her early interactions with him, Miguel had written down the woman's description, noting the bakery kiosk where Kane had purchased something for her. Over the following weeks, he'd made a point to walk past the kiosk during his breaks, eventually identifying the woman as Lucia. Learning her schedule, observing Kane's regular visits, he'd wanted to warn her, but what could he say? That he suspected Richard Kane of being involved in his sister's disappearance, despite the police finding no evidence? That the expensive gifts and charming attention would eventually lead somewhere sinister? Instead, he'd watched and waited, carrying Marshal Reeves's number like a talisman, praying he'd never need to use it while knowing, somehow, that he would. When the moment finally came, Kane dragging the crying infant through the mall as Lucia chased after them, Miguel had felt a strange calm descend. Not relief, not satisfaction, but certainty. This was why he'd kept watching. This was why he hadn't given up. For Elena, for his mother, and now for Sophia. The penthouse hummed with the controlled chaos of an active investigation. Evidence technicians photographed everything before collecting items, uniformed officers secured doorways, and detectives conferred in low voices. Richard Kane remained. Under guard near the entrance, his lawyer now present, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit who had arrived with remarkable speed. Dana stood in the office, supervising the cataloging of the safe's contents. The multiple passports had different names, but all contained Richard's photograph. The cash, nearly $50,000, was being counted and logged. But it was the laptop and documents that held the most promise. "We'll need to get this." "To our tech team," she told the evidence technician, indicating the computer priority status. Miguel hovered at the edge of the room, watching intently as each item emerged from the safe. His presence wasn't strictly protocol, but Dana hadn't had the heart to send him away. Not when answers about his sister might finally be within reach. "Marshal," the technician called, holding up a small velvet pouch. "Should I open this?" Dana nodded, pulling on fresh gloves before accepting the pouch. She loosened the drawstring and carefully emptied the contents into her palm. A silver necklace with an obsidian heart pendant slid out. Miguel's breath caught audibly. "That's it. That's Elena's." Dana examined it closely. The pendant was distinctive, a polished black stone heart with intricate silver edging. "Are you certain?" "Positive. Our mother saved for months to get it for Elena's quinceañera. It's handmade. The silversmith even put her initials on the back." Dana turned the pendant over. Sure enough, tiny letters were engraved on the silver, backing ER. "Document this carefully," she instructed the technician. "Make sure the initials are clearly photographed." She turned to Miguel. "This is significant evidence. It places your sister's personal property in Kane's possession." Miguel's eyes never left the necklace. "Why would he keep it? If she's..." "Trophies," Dana said quietly. "Some predators keep items to revisit the memory." A commotion from the living room interrupted them. Dana secured the necklace in an evidence bag before moving quickly toward the noise, Miguel following close behind. Lucia stood confronting Richard's lawyer. Sophia clutched protectively against her chest. "He was going to take her out of the country. I saw the plane tickets." The lawyer maintained a professional calm. "My client was planning a legitimate business trip and intended to inform Ms. Mendez of his travel plans." "Liar." Lucia's voice broke. "He said Sophia deserved better than me, that the insurance would..." She stopped abruptly, a new realization dawning. The insurance papers. He made me sign insurance papers for Sophia. Dana stepped forward. What kind of insurance? Life insurance, Lucia said, her face paling. He said it was normal, that all parents should have coverage for their children, but he was the beneficiary. The lawyer interjected smoothly. Many godparents are named as beneficiaries. It's a common arrangement. He's not her godfather, Lucia snapped. He's nothing to her. Detective Powell had been listening intently. We'll need those insurance documents. Did you keep copies? No, but I signed them in his home office. They must be here somewhere. Dana turned to the evidence technicians. We need to locate insurance documentation for Sophia Mendez. Priority search of the office. Richard remained silent throughout the exchange, his expression impassive as he watched the activity around him. Only when officers began leading him toward the door did he speak. This is all a misunderstanding that will be resolved shortly. His voice carried the confident tone of someone accustomed to problems disappearing. My attorney will handle everything. As he passed Miguel, he added in a lower voice, some mysteries stay unsolved, boy. Accept it and move on. Miguel stepped forward, but Dana caught his arm, holding him back as Richard was escorted out. That's what he wants, she murmured. Don't give him the satisfaction. Once Richard was gone, the tension in the apartment shifted. Lucia sank onto the sofa, the adrenaline that had sustained her finally ebbing. Sophia, remarkably calm throughout the chaos, reached up to pat her mother's tear-streaked face. Is it over? Lucia asked, looking up at Dana. The immediate danger is, Dana confirmed. He'll be held without bail given the flight risk. But Sophia is safe now? Yes, Dana assured her. You both are. From the office came another shout. Marshal, we found something else. Dana hurried back, Miguel at her heels. An evidence technician had discovered a hidden compartment in the desk, a false bottom drawer containing a hard drive and a folder of documents. It's encrypted, the technician said, holding up the drive, but these aren't. He handed Dana the folder. Inside were photographs, surveillance images of young women with children. Each photo had annotations, physical descriptions, ages, locations. Some had check marks beside them. Others, including a photo of Lucia and Sophia, were circled. My God, Dana murmured, flipping through the images. How many are there? At least 12 different women and children, the technician replied. Miguel peered over Dana's shoulder, scanning each photo desperately. On the third page, he froze. That's her, he whispered, pointing to a surveillance photo of a young woman entering a building. That's Elena. Unlike the others, Elena's photo had a notation beside it, CR facility. Dana studied the image. What do you think CR stands for? Miguel shook his head, unable to speak as he stared at his sister's face. The first confirmation in 3 years that she had existed beyond his memories. Dana carefully placed the photos back in the folder and handed it to the evidence technician. Full documentation, then secure transport to the federal building. This just became a multi-jurisdictional trafficking investigation. She turned to Miguel, whose eyes remained fixed on where the folder had been. This is good news, she said gently. It means there's a chance Elena is still alive. Miguel looked up, hope and fear warring in his expression. Where? Where would he have taken her? I don't know yet, Dana admitted. But these photographs and the CR notation give us something to work with. Kane has properties in multiple countries. We'll check all of them. For the first time since entering the penthouse, Miguel allowed himself to truly believe that finding Elena might be possible. Not just justice for her disappearance, but an actual reunion. We'll find her, Dana promised, whatever it takes. The federal building downtown buzzed with activity despite the late hour. Dana had commandeered a conference room where evidence from Kane's penthouse was being categorized and analyzed. Whiteboards covered one wall, gradually filling with names, locations, and connections as the investigation expanded. Miguel sat in a corner, a cup of untouched coffee cooling in front of him. He'd refused to go home, insisting on staying until they found something concrete about Elena. Dana hadn't had the heart to refuse him. The tech team cracked the laptop password, an agent announced, entering with a tablet. Financial records going back 5 years, offshore accounts, shell companies, property holdings in 7 countries. Dana took the tablet, scrolling through the information. Any indication of what CR might stand for? Costa Rica, the agent replied. He owns a compound there through a shell corporation. Very remote location, heavy security. Miguel straightened. That's where Elena is. We don't know that for certain, Dana cautioned, though the notation beside Elena's photo made it a strong possibility. We're working with Costa Rican authorities to investigate the property, but international cooperation takes time. How much time? Miguel asked, his voice strained. Dana didn't answer directly. We're moving as quickly as possible. The door opened. Again, and a forensic accountant entered with more files. Marshal Reeves, you need to see this. We found a pattern in Kane's financial transactions. She spread several documents across the table. Regular payments to a private adoption agency based in Guatemala, corresponding deposits from wealthy clients in Europe and Asia. The amounts are substantial, $100,000 to $500,000 per transaction. Baby selling, Dana said grimly. It appears so. And there's more. The accountant indicated another set of documents, insurance policies, not just on Sofia Mendez, but on 7 other children, all with Kane as beneficiary. Miguel approached the table, studying the documents. He was planning to kill them or make them disappear and collect the insurance, Dana suggested. Either way, it shows premeditation. There's something else. You should see, the accountant continued, opening a digital file. Hidden folder on the hard drive. Surveillance system from another property. The screen displayed interior footage of what looked like an upscale residential facility. Tastefully decorated rooms, landscaped gardens visible through windows, young women moving about in common areas. What is this place? Dana asked. Based on the metadata, it's live streaming from the Costa Rica property, the accountant explained. We're seeing it in real time. Miguel moved closer to the screen, scanning each figure desperately. Can you show different areas, more rooms? The accountant navigated through various camera feeds, a dining area, hallways, what appeared to be classrooms or activity rooms. In each, young women between approximately 17 and 25 years old could be seen. Some looked resigned, others distressed. None appeared physically abused, but the setting had an unmistakable institutional quality despite the luxurious surroundings. Stop, Miguel suddenly said. Go back to that last one. The accountant returned to the previous feed, a small library where a young woman sat alone reading. Her face was partially obscured by her hair, but her posture, the way she tucked her feet beneath her, struck Miguel with painful familiarity. That's her, he whispered. That's Elena. Dana studied the image. The resemblance to Miguel was there, the same delicate features, the same way of holding her head. Can we enhance this? The accountant zoomed in. The young woman looked up briefly, as if hearing something outside the camera's view, and her face became clearly visible. Elena, Miguel confirmed, his voice breaking. She's alive. Dana immediately pulled out her phone, stepping away to make calls. We need to expedite the Costa Rican operation. We have confirmation of at least one missing U.S. citizen being held at the location. While she spoke, Miguel remained transfixed by the image of his sister. She looked different, thinner, her expression more guarded than the vibrant girl in his memories. But she was alive. What is that place? He asked the accountant. What's he doing with them? Based on the documents we've reviewed, it appears to be a holding facility. The women stay there until their associated children are placed with buyers. They're essentially hostages to ensure the children behave and adapt to their new families. Miguel's hands clenched into fists. And after that? The accountant hesitated. Some financial records suggest certain women were eventually placed as well, possibly as domestic workers or companions for wealthy clients. Others simply disappear from the books. Dana returned, her expression determined. Costa Rican authorities have agreed to raid the compound at dawn their time, about 4 hours from now. They're coordinating with our attaché in San Jose. I'm going, Miguel said immediately. That's not possible, Dana replied. This is an international law enforcement operation. She's my sister. I haven't seen her in 3 years. I need to be there. Miguel, I understand. No, you don't, he interrupted, his voice rising. Our mother died waiting for answers. My grandmother cries herself to sleep still. I've spent every day since Elena disappeared looking for her. And now she's right there. He pointed at the screen. 4 hours away. Please. Dana studied him for a long moment. I can't take you to Costa Rica. That's not within my authority. Miguel's shoulders slumped. But, Dana continued, I can arrange for you to be at the federal building when we establish video contact with the raid team. You'll be able to see what happens in real time, and when we find Elena, you can speak with her immediately. It wasn't what he wanted, but Miguel recognized it was the best option available. Thank you. Dana turned back to the evidence boards. In the meantime, we need to identify every child and woman in Kane's files. This operation spans multiple countries, potentially dozens of victims. It's going to be a long night. Miguel approached the board where photos from Kane's files had been arranged chronologically. Elena's was dated 3 years ago, one of the earliest. Lucia and Sofia appeared to be the most recent. How many others are there? He asked quietly. Too many, Dana replied. But for the first time, we have a chance to find them all. The small interview room at the police station had been transformed into a makeshift refuge for Lucia and Sofia. Someone had brought in a comfortable chair, blankets, and a small basket of toys and baby supplies. A social worker named Valerie sat nearby, her presence both protective and supportive. Detective Powell entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee, offering one to Lucia. It's not great, but it's hot. Thank you, she said, accepting the cup with the hand not cradling Sofia, who had finally fallen asleep. Any news? The federal marshals are handling most of it now, Powell explained, taking a seat across from her. They've found evidence that Kane was involved in something much bigger than we initially thought. Lucia nodded, not surprised. I knew something was wrong. The way he spoke about Sofia sometimes, like she was a possession, not a person. Valerie leaned forward. Lucia, I know this is difficult, but could you tell us exactly what made you first become suspicious of Richard? Lucia took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. It was little things at first, how he wanted to document everything about Sofia, her height, weight, developmental milestones. I thought he was just being thorough, interested in her growth. She adjusted Sofia gently as the baby stirred. Then I noticed he was particularly focused on her medical records. He insisted on taking her to a specific doctor, said the man was the best pediatrician in the city. The doctor took blood samples, did comprehensive testing. Richard said it was preventative care, covered by insurance he'd arranged. Did you ever meet other women through Richard? Powell asked. No, he kept his relationship with me very private. Said it was to protect me from gossip since he was well known. Lucia's expression hardened. Now I realize he was keeping us isolated. Easier to control that way. The door opened and Dana entered. She'd come directly from the federal building to update them on the investigation. Ms. Mendez, she greeted Lucia. How are you holding up? Better now that Sofia is safe. Lucia looked up at the marshal. They told me you found evidence about other children? Dana nodded, taking a seat. Richard Kane appears to have been running a sophisticated trafficking operation. He targeted single mothers, gained their trust, then took their children to sell to wealthy buyers overseas. Lucia paled, instinctively tightening her hold on Sofia. He was going to sell my baby? Based on the evidence we found, yes, the flight he booked was to Costa Rica, where he maintains a compound. We believe children are held there temporarily before being transported to their buyers. Tears filled Lucia's eyes. I trusted him. I let him into our lives. This is not your fault, Dana said firmly. Kane is a practiced predator. He specifically targets women who are vulnerable, financially stressed single mothers without strong support systems. What happens now? Lucia asked, wiping away tears. Kane will remain in custody. No judge will grant bail given the flight risk and severity of charges. We're working with international authorities to raid his Costa Rica facility. As for you and Sofia, Dana gestured to Valerie. The social worker smiled gently. We've arranged temporary emergency housing for you both. A safe location with 24-hour security, until the immediate investigation is complete. And after that? Lucia looked uncertain. We have programs to help you get back on your feet, Valerie explained. Housing assistance, childcare vouchers, job, placement if needed. I don't want charity, Lucia said quietly. I just want to keep my daughter safe. This isn't charity, Dana assured her. It's justice. Kane exploited you and planned to take your child. The system failed to protect you initially, but we can help make it right now. Lucia considered this, gently stroking Sophia's dark curls. There are others, aren't there? Other women like me? Dana nodded. We've identified several. Some have lost their children already. We're working to locate and recover them. I want to help, Lucia said suddenly. If my testimony can strengthen the case against him, I'll give it. If other mothers need support or someone who understands, I want to be there for them. Powell and Dana exchanged surprised glances. That's very brave, Dana said, but your first priority should be Sophia and your own recovery. Helping others is part of my recovery, Lucia insisted. Richard made me feel helpless, like I couldn't protect my own child. I need to take that power back. Valerie nodded approvingly. When you're ready, there are victim advocacy groups that would welcome your perspective. A gentle knock at the door preceded a young officer entering with a tray of food. Thought you might be hungry, he said, setting it down. Lucia smiled gratefully, the first genuine smile since the ordeal began. Thank you. As she adjusted Sophia to eat something, the baby woke, blinking sleepily. She looked around the unfamiliar room, her expression momentarily uncertain until she focused on her mother's face. Then she broke into a toothless grin, tiny hands reaching up to pat Lucia's cheeks. She seems to be doing well, Dana observed. Children are resilient, Valerie said, especially when they feel secure in their primary attachment. Lucia kissed Sophia's forehead. We'll be okay, she murmured, as much to herself as to her daughter. We'll get through this together. Dana's phone buzzed with a message. She checked it, then stood. The Costa Rica operation is moving forward. I need to get back to the federal building. Will you let me know what happens? Lucia asked. If you find the other children? I will, Dana promised. And Ms. Mendez, what you did today, fighting for your daughter, then agreeing to help with the case, that takes remarkable courage. Lucia looked down at Sophia, now contentedly, playing with a toy someone had brought. Not courage, she said softly. Love. Richard Kane sat motionless in the federal interrogation room, his expensive suit now replaced with standard-issue detention clothing. Across from him, two agents waited patiently. He had refused to speak since invoking his right to counsel, and his attorney, now her third hour of private consultation with her client, had yet to emerge with a statement. In an observation room, Dana watched through one-way glass alongside the U.S. attorney assigned to the case, Elizabeth Chen. He hasn't said a word, Dana noted. He doesn't have to, Chen replied, reviewing documents from the ongoing investigation. The evidence is overwhelming. Multiple counts of kidnapping, human trafficking, insurance fraud, money laundering, falsification of documents. We're looking at several life sentences, even without his cooperation. What about his associates? The network has to be extensive, Chen nodded. We've identified the private adoption agency in Guatemala. It's a front. The director is being detained by local authorities. We've also frozen accounts connected to shell companies in Panama, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands. The door to the observation room opened, and a junior agent entered with a tablet. Marshal Reeves, we found something interesting in Kane's phone records. Multiple calls to Judge Raymond Wilson's private line. Dana took the tablet, scrolling through the data. Wilson, he's the one who denied our search warrant request 3 years ago during the Elena Ramirez investigation. Not just that, the agent continued. Wilson signed off on at least 4 adoptions connected to Kane's network in the last 2 years. All closed proceedings, all records sealed. Chen's expression hardened. Get me everything on Wilson. Bank records, travel history, family connections. Anything that might show a link to Kane beyond these calls. As the agent left, Dana turned back to the window. Richard's lawyer had returned to the interrogation room, leaning close to whisper something in her client's ear. His face remained impassive. He thinks he's untouchable, Dana said quietly, that his connections will protect him. Not this time, Chen assured her. This case is too big, too visible now. No one will risk going down with him. As if on cue, the interrogation room door opened and an agent entered with a note for the investigators. After reading it, one of them looked directly at the observation window and nodded. "What's happening?" Dana asked. Chen checked her phone, which had just buzzed with a message. "Judge Wilson's clerk just called the office. He's recusing himself from all cases and taking an immediate leave of absence. Rats fleeing the sinking ship," Dana murmured. "And he won't be the last," Chen added. "I've requested warrants for 3 members of the county adoption board and a clerk in the records department. The conspiracy is unraveling." In the interrogation room, Richard's attorney stood abruptly. "My client requires a moment alone." Once the investigators had left, she turned to Richard, her professional composure cracking slightly. "Wilson's recused himself. Your accounts are frozen. 3 more associates have agreed to cooperate with prosecutors." For the first time, a flicker of concern crossed Richard's face. "They can't prove anything without documentation, and the only copies are secure." "Apparently not secure enough," his attorney replied tightly. "Federal agents are executing search warrants at all your properties. They've already found a hidden safe at your lake house containing adoption records, payment ledgers, and correspondence with overseas buyers." Richard's confident facade finally showed cracks. Those were encrypted. Not well enough, apparently. She gathered her papers. "As your counsel, I strongly advise you to consider cooperation. The U.S. Attorney is prepared to take the death penalty off the table in exchange for information leading to the recovery of all trafficked children." "Death penalty?" Richard's voice rose slightly. "That's absurd. No one died." His attorney fixed him with a cold stare. "They're treating this as a continuing criminal enterprise involving kidnapping, which is capital eligible. And given the evidence they've amassed in just 24 hours, conviction is virtually certain." In the observation room, Dana's phone rang. "Reeves," she answered, listening intently. "Understood. I'll be right there." She turned to Chen. "The press conference is about to start. Miguel Ramirez agreed to make a statement appealing for other families to come forward." Chen nodded. "Good. Public pressure will help flush out more of Kane's associates." Dana paused at the door. "What do you think he'll do?" she asked, nodding toward Richard. "Men like Kane value self-preservation." "Above all," Chen replied. "Once he realizes no one's coming to save him, he'll talk to save himself." The Federal Building's press room was packed with reporters when Dana arrived. Miguel stood nervously near the podium, reviewing handwritten notes. Despite his youth, he carried himself with remarkable composure. "Are you ready for this?" Dana asked him quietly. Miguel nodded. "I've been ready for 3 years." The press conference began with a brief statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office outlining the case against Richard Kane and the ongoing international investigation. Then, Miguel stepped forward. "My name is Miguel Ramirez," he began, his voice steady despite the camera flashes. 3 years ago, my sister Elena disappeared while working for Richard Kane. Today, we know she is alive, being held at a compound in Costa Rica, along with other victims of Kane's trafficking operation. He held up a photograph of Elena. "If your family member disappeared after coming into contact with Richard Kane or his businesses, please contact the FBI immediately. If you were approached by Kane about adoption services or special opportunities for your children, come forward. You are not alone, and you will be protected." As Miguel spoke, Dana noticed a commotion at the back of the room. An agent approached, whispering urgently in her ear, "Judge Wilson was just found in his car. Apparent suicide." Left a detailed confession implicating the district attorney and 2 city council members in Kane's operation. Dana absorbed this news silently, watching Miguel conclude his statement with quiet dignity. The conspiracy was collapsing faster than anyone had anticipated, the powerful figures in Kane's network choosing self-destruction over facing justice. It was only a matter of time before Richard himself broke. Dawn broke over the mountains of Costa Rica as the Joint Task Force moved into position around the sprawling compound. Local authorities led the operation, supported by U.S. federal agents and Interpol representatives. The property, officially registered as a wellness retreat, sat isolated on 50 acres of private land, surrounded by dense forest and protected by high walls. In the command center, established 2 miles away, live drone footage showed the initial breach, tactical teams entering through 3 access points simultaneously. The operation had been meticulously planned to minimize risk to potential victims inside. Alpha Team has secured the main building, came the first report. No resistance encountered. Bravo Team entering the East Wing. Multiple civilians identified appear to be staff. Charlie Team has located residential quarters. Approximately 15 young women present. No visible injuries. In the federal building back in the United States, Miguel sat beside Dana in a secure conference room, watching the operation unfold on multiple screens. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tightly, his knuckles had turned white. They'd been monitoring the raid for 45 minutes, and still no confirmed sighting of Elena. Could she have been moved? He asked anxiously. We saw her on the surveillance feed yesterday. It's a large compound, Dana reminded him. They're still clearing areas, and the teams are being thorough, checking for hidden rooms, false walls, underground spaces. On screen, the raid continued with clinical efficiency. Staff members were being detained and questioned. Young women, all appearing to be between 17 and 25, were being escorted to a secure area for identification and medical evaluation. Delta. Team reporting, came another voice. We've located what appears to be a records room, multiple files, computer systems. Miguel leaned forward as the body cam footage showed agents examining filing cabinets filled with folders. Each had a photograph clipped to the front, young women's faces, including several they'd already identified from Kane's files. There, Miguel pointed suddenly. 3rd cabinet, 2nd drawer. The agent's camera had briefly panned across a folder with Elena's photo. The team leader directed the camera back to it. Subject identified as Elena Ramirez, he confirmed. File indicates she's housed in Building C, Room 14. Dana immediately relayed the information to the operational command. We have a location on the Ramirez subject. Building C, Room 14. High priority extraction. Minutes that felt like hours passed as Charlie Team redirected to Building C, a smaller structure separated from the main complex by landscaped gardens. The body cam footage became choppy as agents moved quickly through corridors, checking room numbers. Room 14 located, came the report. Door locked. Miguel held his breath as an agent knocked firmly. Federal agents, please stand away from the, door. When no response came, they breached the door with a small ram. The camera swept into a simply furnished bedroom, a bed, desk, bookshelf, and small sitting area. Sunlight streamed through barred windows that overlooked the gardens. But the room was empty. No occupant present, the agent reported. Miguel's heart sank. Where is she? Before Dana could respond, another report came through. All teams be advised, we have movement in the north garden. Multiple subjects attempting to access the emergency tunnel. The view switched to aerial drone footage, showing 3 figures running across manicured grounds toward a small maintenance building. 2 appeared to be security personnel. The 3rd was a young woman. That's her, Miguel whispered, recognizing his sister's movements even from the aerial view. That's Elena. Dana grabbed the radio. Subject Ramirez identified among the fleeing individuals. Non-lethal intervention only. The drone footage captured the tactical team intercepting the group before they reached the maintenance building. The security personnel immediately surrendered when confronted by armed agents. Elena, however, attempted to run in another direction before being gently but firmly detained by a female agent. Subject secured, came the confirmation. No injuries. The body cam of the agent restraining Elena showed her up close for the first time, her frightened face, her struggles diminishing as the agent spoke calmly to her in Spanish. You're safe now, the agent was saying. We're here to help you. Your family has been looking for you. Elena stopped struggling, disbelief replacing fear. My family? Your brother Miguel. He never stopped searching for you. Tears filled Elena's eyes. Miguel? "He's alive?" "Very much alive," the agent assured her, "and waiting to speak with you as soon as we get you to safety." The command center quickly established a secure video connection. Miguel moved to the main screen, his own eyes wet with tears as Elena's face appeared. 3 years older than when he'd last seen her, thinner, her eyes holding shadows that hadn't been there before, but unmistakably his sister. "Elena," he whispered, reaching toward the screen. "Miguelito?" Her voice broke on the childhood nickname. "Is it really you?" "It's me. We found you. We're bringing you home." Elena covered her mouth with her hand, unable to speak through her tears. Finally, she managed, "Mama? Abuela?" Miguel's expression faltered. "Mama, she got sick, Elena, after you disappeared. But Abuela is waiting for you. We never gave up hope." Elena nodded, absorbing this painful news. Then, her voice stronger. "There are others here, girls like me, and children somewhere else. They take them away after—" "We know," Dana interjected, gently moving into frame beside Miguel. "We're finding them all, thanks to your brother." Elena looked at Miguel with new understanding. "You did this? You found me?" "I never stopped looking," he said simply, "and now we're bringing you home." In Costa Rica, the operation continued to unfold. 2 additional buildings were discovered on the property, one containing 3 young children awaiting placement, another housing extensive documentation of Kane's trafficking network. 17 young women in total were recovered, many having been missing for years. But for Miguel, the world had narrowed to his sister's face on the screen, alive, found, coming home. After 3 years of searching, the impossible had happened. Elena was safe. The federal courthouse buzzed with tension as Richard Kane's preliminary hearing commenced. 2 weeks had passed since his arrest, 2 weeks of revelations that had shocked the city and dominated national headlines. The courtroom was packed, with journalists, victims' families, and curious citizens, all eager to witness the first public appearance of the man whose respectable facade had hidden such darkness. Miguel sat in the front row beside his grandmother, Abuela Rosa. At 72, she was a small, fierce woman whose grief had aged her beyond her years, but today there was new life in her eyes. Beside them sat Lucia, who had insisted on attending despite the difficulty of arranging childcare for Sofia. "He should see our faces," she had told Miguel when they met outside the courthouse. "He should know we're not afraid anymore, U.S." Attorney Elizabeth Chen represented the government, her table covered with meticulously organized files. Across the aisle, Richard's defense team had expanded to 3 attorneys from one of the most expensive firms in the country. Richard himself sat between them, dressed in a tailored suit rather than detention clothing, a privilege secured by his lawyers, but one that did little to mask the reality of his circumstances. Judge Harriet Sandoval entered, her reputation for no-nonsense proceedings preceding her. "United States versus Richard Allen Kane," she announced. "Preliminary hearing to determine if sufficient evidence exists to proceed to trial." Chen rose. "Your Honor, the government is prepared to present evidence supporting 37 federal charges against the defendant, including kidnapping, human trafficking, fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy." Richard's lead attorney countered with expected procedural objections and a request for bail, which Judge Sandoval dismissed almost immediately. "Given the flight risk, international connections, and severity of charges, bail is denied," she stated firmly. "Proceed with the evidence, Ms. Chen." What followed was a methodical presentation of the case against Richard Kane. FBI agents testified about evidence recovered from his properties. Financial experts detailed the money trail connecting him to international trafficking networks. Local police described the initial kidnapping of Sofia Mendez that had broken the case open. Then, Dana took the stand, her testimony particularly damaging as she outlined the 3-year investigation that had begun with Elena Ramirez's disappearance. "We now have documented evidence connecting the defendant to the abduction of at least 14 women and 11 children," she explained. The Costa Rica compound served as a holding facility where women were detained while their children were processed for illegal adoption to wealthy clients overseas. Richard remained impassive throughout, occasionally whispering to his attorneys but showing no visible reaction to the mounting evidence against him. It was only when Lucia was called to testify that his composure showed the first cracks. She spoke clearly despite her obvious nervousness, describing how Richard had gained her trust, the escalating control he exerted, and finally the terrifying moment when he took Sophia. "He told me she deserved better than I could give her," Lucia said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "That everything had been arranged and it was too late to change the plan." "And what do you believe he meant by arranged?" Chen asked. "Based on the documents I later saw in his apartment, I believe he had already sold my daughter to someone." "Overseas," Richard's attorney objected immediately. "Speculation, Your Honor." "Sustained," Judge Sandoval replied. "The witness will restrict testimony to direct knowledge and observations." Lucia nodded, then looked directly at Richard for the first time. "What I know for certain is that he planned to take my child from me permanently. He said it was for the best, but he meant for his best, for the money." Throughout the testimony, Miguel watched Richard carefully. The businessman maintained his practiced, neutral expression, but Miguel could see the subtle signs of stress, the tightness around his eyes, the occasional flexing of his jaw muscles. This was a man unused to consequences, now facing the collapse of his carefully constructed world. When court recessed for the day, Richard was led away by marshals. As he passed the gallery, his eyes briefly met Miguel's. There was no remorse there, no acknowledgement, only cold calculation, as if still assessing how to turn the situation to his advantage. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the exit, cameras flashing as Miguel, Abuela Rosa, and Lucia emerged. "How do you feel about today's proceedings?" a journalist called out. Miguel hesitated, then stepped forward. "Today was just the beginning. Real justice will come when all the children and women he trafficked are safely home with their families." Another reporter pushed closer. "Is it true your sister has been recovered from Costa Rica?" "My sister Elena is safe and receiving medical care," Miguel confirmed. "She'll be returning home soon." Abuela Rosa, who had been silent throughout the day, suddenly spoke up. "That man took my granddaughter. He took many daughters from many families. We are here to make sure he never takes another." Her simple, powerful statement silenced the press momentarily, allowing Dana to escort them to a waiting vehicle. "You all did well today," she told them as they drove away from the media frenzy. "The judge has seen enough to move forward with a full trial." "So for what happens next?" Lucia asked. "The U.S. attorney will present the case to a grand jury for a formal indictment. Given the evidence, that's essentially a formality at this point. Then we prepare for trial, though there's a strong possibility Cain will seek a plea deal to avoid the death penalty." Miguel looked out the window at the city passing by. Will he give up the names of everyone involved? The buyers, the other people in his network? "That's what the prosecution will push for," Dana confirmed. "His cooperation in exchange for taking capital punishment off the table." Abuela Rosa made a small sound of disapproval. "He deserves no mercy." "It's not about mercy," Dana explained, gently. "It's about recovering every child, helping every victim. Some families have been searching for years, just like you were." The elderly woman nodded reluctantly, understanding the painful calculus of justice. Miguel reached over to take her hand, feeling the thin bones beneath paper-like skin. She had carried so much grief for so long. "Elena's coming home, Abuela," he reminded her softly, "and because of what happened, other families will get their children back too." For the first time in 3 years, Abuela Rosa smiled, a true smile that reached her eyes. "Yes," she said simply, "our Elena is coming home." 1 month after the raid in Costa Rica, Miguel stood anxiously at the international arrivals gate, a bouquet of yellow daisies, Elena's favorite, clutched in his trembling hands. Beside him, Abuela Rosa fingered her rosary beads, murmuring prayers of gratitude. They had been waiting for this moment for 3 years, and now that it had arrived, it felt almost dreamlike. The processing of victims from Cain's compound had been complex. Medical evaluations, psychological assessments, interviews with authorities, and extensive paperwork had all been necessary before Elena and the other women could return to their respective countries. Throughout it all, Miguel had spoken with his sister daily via video calls, each conversation rebuilding the connection that had been forcibly severed. Flight 247 from San Jose, now arriving at Gate 36, announced the overhead speaker. Miguel's heart raced. Dana, who had insisted on being present for this reunion, placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. "Deep breaths," she advised. "Remember what the counselor said. She's been through a lot. This adjustment will take time." Miguel nodded, trying to heed the guidance they'd received from the victim specialists who had prepared them for Elena's return. She would need patience, space, and above all, a sense of control over her life that had been denied her for years. The first passengers began emerging from the jetway, business travelers and tourists returning from Costa Rica's beaches. Then came a group escorted by federal agents, the recovered victims being returned to their American families. And there was Elena. Thinner than Miguel remembered, her once exuberant smile now tentative, she scanned the waiting crowd until her eyes found her family. For a moment she froze, as if disbelieving the sight before her. Then she was running, dropping her small bag as she rushed into her grandmother's outstretched arms. "Abuelita," she sobbed, clinging to the elderly woman. "Abuelita." Abuela Rosa held her granddaughter tightly, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "Mi niña preciosa, my precious girl, you're home now." Miguel stood slightly apart, giving them this moment, until Elena turned to him. "Miguelito," she whispered, using the childhood nickname that had once annoyed him, but now sounded like the sweetest music. They embraced, and Miguel was struck by how fragile she felt. The strong, vibrant sister of his memories now seemed breakable in his arms. But her grip was firm, desperate, as if afraid he might disappear if she let go. "I knew you'd find me," she murmured against his shoulder. "Somehow, I always knew." The drive home was filled with gentle conversation. Elena asked about the neighborhood, old friends, familiar places, anchoring herself to the world she had been taken from. She spoke little of her time in captivity, and they didn't press. There would be time for those conversations when she was ready. Their apartment had been prepared for her return, her old room cleaned and refreshed with new bedding, curtains, and a small desk by the window. Gifts of welcome from neighbors and church members lined the kitchen table. Home-cooked meals, handwritten cards, a prayer blanket from the women's group Abuela Rosa attended. "Everyone has been so kind," Elena said softly, running her fingers over the colorful blanket. "They never forgot you," Miguel told her. "Every year on your birthday, the church held a special prayer service." Exhaustion eventually overtook Elena, and she retired to her room early. Miguel and Abuela Rosa sat in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. "She seems so different," his grandmother observed, worry creasing her brow. "The therapist said that's normal," Miguel reminded her. "She's been through trauma we can't imagine. She needs time, and the nightmares they warned us about, we'll be here for her when they come." Later that night, the predicted nightmares arrived. Miguel woke to Elena's muffled cries and found her thrashing against invisible restraints, pleading, in broken Spanish and English. With gentle words, he coaxed her back to consciousness, to safety. "You're home," he repeated, as she clung to him, trembling. "You're safe. No one will take you again." Gradually, a routine developed. Elena attended therapy 3 times a week with a specialist in trauma recovery. On Tuesdays, she joined a support group with other rescued women, including 2 who had been held at the same compound. Each small step forward was celebrated, each setback met with patience and understanding. 2 weeks after her return, Lucia visited with Sofia. The meeting had been carefully arranged by the therapists working with both women, who believed they might find healing in each other's experiences. At first, Elena was hesitant, holding herself slightly apart, as Lucia and Sofia entered the apartment. But when the baby reached out with curious hands toward Elena's long braid, Something softened in her expression. "She's beautiful," Elena said, allowing Sophia to grasp her finger. "You're very brave." "Oh, so are you," Lucia replied simply. They talked for hours, their shared trauma creating a bond that needed few words to express. When Lucia mentioned her plan to start a small catering business, the dream Richard had exploited, but never intended, to help fulfill, Elena's eyes lit up for the first time since her return. "I used to love baking with my mother," she said. "Before, maybe you could help me sometimes," Lucia suggested gently, "when you feel ready." That evening, after their visitors had left, Elena approached Miguel with new determination in her eyes. "I want to finish high school," she announced. "Get my diploma, maybe even go to college eventually." Miguel smiled, recognizing a glimpse of the sister he remembered. "Whatever you want to do, we'll make it happen." Dana visited regularly, bringing updates on the case and checking on Elena's progress. Her most recent visit had included news that 3 more children had been recovered from buyers overseas. "It's because of the information you provided," she told Elena. "The details you remembered about conversations you overheard, documents you glimpsed, they've been invaluable." Elena had nodded, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. "Will I need to testify at his trial?" "Only if you choose to," Dana assured her. "Your written statement may be sufficient." That night, Miguel found Elena sitting by her bedroom window, staring at the stars, barely visible through the city lights. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her. "That night at the mall," she replied. "If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't recognized him, but I was. I did." Elena leaned her head against her brother's shoulder. "You saved that baby, and you saved me." Miguel put his arm around her. "We saved each other." 6 months later, Miguel adjusted his tie as he entered the U.S. Marshal's office. What had once been an intimidating government building now felt almost familiar after his months working as a part-time administrative assistant. The position had been Dana's idea, a way to channel his determination and attention to detail into meaningful work while he finished his senior year of high school. "Good morning, Miguel," called the receptionist as he passed. "Marshal Reeves is looking for you." He found Dana in the conference room, reviewing files for an upcoming operation. She looked up with a smile that still carried hints of the professional distance she maintained, a balance she had carefully preserved as both his mentor and his boss. "Right on time," she noted. "Ready for today?" Miguel nodded. The community center called, everything set up for the ceremony. Today marked the official opening of the Esperanza Center, a support facility for families affected by trafficking. The project had begun as a grassroots effort led by Lucia and several other mothers whose children had been targeted by Cain's network. It had quickly gained support from victim advocacy groups, federal agencies, and community organizations. "The press will be there," Dana warned. "Are you and Elena prepared for that?" "We've discussed it. She wants to attend but prefers to stay in the background." Miguel arranged folders on the conference table, a task that helped steady his hands. "Will you announce the final verdict?" Dana nodded. "It's official, as of this morning. Cain accepted the plea deal, multiple life sentences without possibility of parole in exchange for complete cooperation. His testimony has already led to the recovery of 9 more children and the arrest of 14 co-conspirators, including 3 judges and a state senator. No chance of appeal? None. It's over, Miguel. He'll never hurt anyone again." The finality of those words settled over him, a weight lifting that he hadn't fully realized he was carrying. In the months since Elena's return, their lives had gradually rebuilt around a new normal. Elena had completed her GED and enrolled in community college classes. Abuela Rosa's health had improved as her grief lifted, and Miguel had discovered a passion for the investigative work he'd been exposed to through Dana. "I have something else to discuss with you," Dana said, closing her files. "You'll be graduating in 3 months. Have you thought about what comes next?" Miguel had thought of little else. "I applied to the criminal justice program at City College." "I know," Dana smiled. "I wrote one of your recommendation letters. But I have another suggestion to consider. She handed him a brochure. The Marshal Service's internship program. It's competitive, but with your experience and personal connection to a major case, you'd be a strong candidate. Miguel stared at the brochure, momentarily speechless. You think I could qualify? I know you could. You've already demonstrated the core qualities we look for: perseverance, attention to detail, and a genuine commitment to justice. She checked her watch. Think about it. But right now, we need to get to the center. The Esperanza Center occupied a renovated community building near the downtown area. As Miguel and Dana arrived, the parking lot was already filling with families, officials, and media representatives. A small podium had been set up on the front steps, decorated with yellow ribbons, the symbol the families had adopted for their missing loved ones. Inside, Lucia was directing volunteers, Sophia toddling behind her on increasingly confident legs. In the 6 months since Cain's arrest, Lucia had emerged as a natural leader, transforming her own trauma into advocacy for other victims. Her catering business, started with a small business grant, was gaining popularity, and she had hired Elena part-time to help with baking. "There you are," Lucia called, spotting Miguel. "Elena's in the resource room helping set up the library." He found his sister arranging books on newly installed shelves, resources for families navigating the complex emotional and legal aftermath of trafficking. At 22, Elena still carried visible and invisible scars from her ordeal, but each day brought new strength. Her therapist had encouraged her involvement with the center as part of her healing process. "Is it time?" she asked, seeing Miguel's formal attire. "Almost." "How are you feeling?" Elena considered the question, a habit she'd developed in therapy, taking time to truly assess her emotional state before answering. "Nervous," she admitted, "but good nervous, important nervous." The ceremony began with remarks from city officials and victim advocates. Dana spoke briefly about the ongoing efforts to recover all children identified in Cain's records, a task that had expanded to coordination with authorities in 12 countries. Then, Lucia took the podium, Sophia balanced on her hip. 6 months ago, I was a single mother working 2 jobs, believing I had found a miracle in a man who promised to help me achieve my dreams. Instead, I nearly lost everything that truly mattered. Her voice caught briefly. But today is not about what was lost. It's about what we found: strength in each other, hope in our children's futures, and a community that stands with us. As applause filled the air, Miguel noticed Elena slipping away from the crowd. He followed her to a quiet corner of the garden where a small memorial had been established, names and photographs of children still missing, candles waiting to be lit. "I keep thinking about the others," Elena said softly. "The women who didn't make it out, the children who haven't been found." Miguel nodded, understanding. "That's why this place matters, why the work continues." After the ceremony, they drove to the cemetery, a detour they had planned in advance. Their mother's grave was well tended, with fresh flowers Abuela Rosa had placed the previous Sunday. Elena knelt beside the simple headstone, tracing the engraved name with her fingertips. "I wish she could have known I came home," she whispered. "She knew," Miguel said with quiet certainty. "Somehow, she knew." They stood together in peaceful silence until Elena spoke again. "What happens now?" Miguel considered the many layers of her question. What happened next for them, for the case, for their futures? "We keep going," he said simply. One day at a time. Back at the center, the celebration continued. Families connected over shared experiences. Volunteers distributed resources. And children, including Sophia, now taking her first tentative steps without support, played in the specially designed play area. Watching his sister join Lucia at the refreshment table, seeing the tentative smile she offered to another survivor, Miguel felt something settle in his chest. Not an ending, but a turning point. The painful chapter that had begun 3 years ago had not been erased, but it no longer defined their story. Justice had been served. Healing had begun. And life, resilient, persistent life continued its imperfect, beautiful forward motion.